polynomials and special products. All right, we're going to talk about what a polynomial is, how to classify it, how to write it in standard form, and then we're going to talk about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and combining like terms. All right, so when we look at this first slide, it says writing polynomials in standard form. Standard form means you write your exponents in descending order, right? We're talking right now about when your polynomial has the same variable, all right? Polynomials are made up of terms. Terms are separated by plus and minus signs. So if I look at letter A, this first polynomial. Yes, ma'am?
Is it this one?
How many terms do you see in A? 4, right? Terms are separated by the plus and minus sign. Now, the sign that is in front of the term goes with it. So if you notice, the 5x to the 7th has a negative sign in front, right? So that's a negative 5x to the 7th. It's a positive 3x. It's a negative 2. Does everybody see that? Standard form, you're going to take your polynomial and write it to where your variable has exponents that are in descending order. Descending means going downwards. Once you figure out the standard form, then you can tell me the degree, the leading coefficient, the constant, all that stuff. Now, the degree is always going to be the highest exponent in standard form when your polynomial is written in standard form. And the leading coefficient. Guys, think about a leading coefficient. If you are the line leader, where are you? In the front. Very good. Coefficient is the number in front of a variable. So your leading coefficient is the number in front of the variable when your equation or expression is written in standard form. Okay, so we're going to go through this. We're going to talk through some. We're going to have some examples, and you guys are going to be like, oh, okay, I totally get it. So if you look at A, where you go from the polynomial itself to standard form, do you see how negative 5x to the 7th is first? Because that's the biggest number. The largest exponent is to the 7th. That negative sign stays with the 5. Then we have 4x squared, because if you're going in descending order, the next number after 7 would be 2. Then you have positive 3x to the first power, and then negative 2. That's our constant. Did everybody see that? Yes or no? All right, so your degree, if you're asked what's the degree, it's the highest exponent when your polynomial is written in standard form. And the leading coefficient is the number in front when your polynomial is written in standard form. It's always the number in front, just the number, not the letter as well. So if you look at B, 4 minus 9x squared. Well, to write it in standard form, which exponent would come first? X to the 0 power or x to the second power? X to the second, good. So you have negative 9x squared plus 4. I said to the 0 power because you could also write this as x to the 0 power, because anything to the 0 power is 1. Good. So your degree here would be 2, and the leading coefficient is negative 9. In this case, this is a polynomial. This is x to the 0 power, because anything to the 0 power is 1, so your degree would be 0. Now, when you have one term, I'm going to write this down, one term, we categorize it as a monomial. 2 terms, everybody know what 2 terms are called? Good, binomial. What are 3 terms? There you go. And then anything more than 3 is a polynomial. Good job. All right, questions? We okay? In this case, guys, you don't see this a lot, but if you did, right, I have a polynomial here. You guys notice here. Well, how is this one a little different from the last one we just did? Has x's and y's, has different variables, okay? You can still put this in standard form. You can still name the degree and all that stuff. When you have different variables, I have an x and a y here. You take the sum of the exponents. What does that mean, sum? You add them. So 3 plus 6 here is what? 9. What are my exponents on 4xy? 1 and 1, so this is 2. And then I have 7 and 4, which is 11. Which number is the biggest? 11. So you would say that this degree is 11 because the sum of the exponents is the biggest. That only happens, guys, when it's more than one variable. 90% of the time, you're just, when asked all these questions, you're just going to answer when it's one variable, like all x's, all y's, that sort of a thing. Just want to bring that to your attention. There are some times when things aren't polynomials, right? There are some instances when things aren't a polynomial. If you have an expression or an equation that has a radical, right? You guys see that radical? You can also write a radical, square root, cube root, that sort of thing, as a fractional or rational exponent. If you have an equation or expression that has either a radical or a fractional exponent, and they said, write this polynomial in standard form, whatever, you would say, oh wait, it's not a polynomial. There's some rules to it. One of the rules is if there's a radical or rational expression, and then the other rule is if there is a denominator that has a variable in it. Do you guys see how this denominator right here has a variable in it? I can also write a variable in a denominator as a negative exponent, which we know that, right? Because if we move exponents up and down, they become negative and positive. So those are two major rules. If you're asked, is this a polynomial? And it either has a radical or a fractional exponent, or it has the variable in a denominator or a negative exponent, then it's not a polynomial. And you guys see what I'm talking about in a second. There's just two little rules there. You want to keep, that's good, highlight it, good. All right, now moving along. This is where we get into the meat of our algebra. What is the difference between these two questions? One is adding and one is subtracting. Guys, that is a huge difference because there's something, an extra little step we have to do in that second example, that B, before we can combine like terms. When can you combine like terms? Or how do you combine like terms, I should say? How can you put stuff together? They have to have the same exponent. They have to have that same last name, the same variable behind it, right? When we add, guys, adding and subtracting, the exponent stays the same. You're just taking something of this and something of that and combining them together. So the first thing you should do is look in between your parentheses. I'm adding. I'm just combining like terms. So take a second to say, okay, the highest exponent I see is what? X to the third, yes? So I have 5 of them here, and I have 1 there. Gives me a total of how many? So 6x cubed. Your exponent stays the same. The next exponent I have is squared. So I have negative 7x squared and a positive 2x squared. Gives me what? Negative 5. Good. Negative 5x squared. And then I'm left with a negative 3 and a positive. Just kidding. I skipped a step. Sorry. What do I have next? Negative x. Good. Just one little x all by itself. And then what do I have? I have a negative 3 and, which gives me? Plus 5. Good. So there I have added correctly. I've combined like terms. Now, if I asked you all of the stuff, if I asked you what the degree was, what the constant was, what the leading coefficient, you guys should be able to tell me, what is the degree of this polynomial? Where'd you get that from? The highest exponent. Good. What is the leading coefficient? 6. Just the 6. Just the number. And then what's the constant? What's the constant? What's the number at the end that doesn't change? 5. Good. Very good. Perfect. We remember this from last year? A little bit? Okay, good. If not, no big deal. Here we go. All right, now you guys just told me a second ago that there was a difference between A and B. So since there's a difference, what do I have to do? How do I do this? Okay. When you subtract a polynomial, what do you do with this negative sign that's in the middle? You do. You have to distribute it to everything in here. Good. If you guys forget to distribute that negative, your whole problem is going to be wrong. So the first parenthesis stays exactly the same. 7x to the fourth minus x squared minus 4x plus 2. And then when I distribute that negative, I have negative 3x to the fourth, right? What's a negative times a negative? A positive 4x squared. And then a negative times a positive is a negative 3x. Good. Now, once we've distributed that negative, now I can go through and combine like terms. What's the biggest exponent you see?
4.
So I have 7x to the fourth and a negative 3x to the fourth. Remember, that sign in front stays with that term. So what's 7 minus 3?
4.
Yep, 4x to the fourth. Then my next exponent would be 2, right? So a negative x squared and a positive 4x squared. Plus, good, 3x squared. Then I have x to the first power. So I have a negative 4x and a negative 3x.
Negative 7.
Perfect, negative 7x. And then what's left over all by itself?
Plus 2.
Plus 2. Perfect. Are we in standard form? Yes. What's the degree?
4.
What's the leading coefficient?
4.
Good. What's the constant? Perfect. Good job, guys. Very good. What's going on here? Anybody? Look at number 2. Is there an addition or a subtraction sign in between those two parentheses? No. So what do they ask me to do? Multiply. Okay? God bless you. On your quiz, you guys will have some, and I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about, so I don't want you guys to get confused. But you're going to have some where you have to add and subtract, some where you have to multiply. You have to pay attention. If there's not a plus or a minus in the middle, that means you have to multiply. So look, right here, number 1, you have one term on the outside multiplied by everything on the inside. All we're doing is distributing. Here, guys, we have to remember our exponent rules. When I multiply bases that are the same, what do I do to the exponents? Add them. If you need to remind yourself that there's a little 1 right here, write it. It's totally fine. But we're going to multiply coefficients, and then we're going to add exponents. So negative 4x times 3x squared. What's negative 4 times 3? Perfect. Negative 12. And then what's x to the first times x squared? I have 2 and 1 gives me 3. Perfect. No worries. No worries, no worries, no worries. Now we're going to distribute again. I have a negative 4x times 5x. So what's negative 4 times 5? Perfect. Negative 20. And I have an x on the outside and x on the inside gives me? Perfect. X squared. Then I have negative 4 times negative 1. Positive 4. And then I have my x. Am I in standard form? Yes. How many terms do I have? So it's called a trinomial. Good. What's the leading coefficient? Negative 12. Good. What's the degree? What's the constant? What's the constant?
0.
0 or none. Good. There isn't one. Good, good, good. All right, number 2. This is where we have to FOIL. Some of you are like, oh, FOIL. First, outer, inner, last. If you don't remember what FOIL stands for, that's okay. You're just distributing twice. We're going to take this negative 7y. We're going to distribute it to both things in the second parenthesis. What's negative 7y times 5? Negative 35y. Then I'm going to take this negative 7y again. I'm going to go out here to negative 9y. Negative times the negative is a? So plus 63. Y times y is? Perfect. Y squared. Now I'm going to take 3 and do the same thing. What's 3 times 5? 15. And what's 3 times negative 9y? Negative 27y. Okay, so now what? Do I just say, oh, I'm so smart and keep going? Well, you should tell yourself you're smart. But what can we do? We can combine like terms. And what else can we do? We have to write our expression in Standard form. What's the highest exponent you see? 2, y squared. So I have 63y squared. Nothing else has a y squared, right? All right, so now we have a negative 35 and a negative 27. When I have two negative numbers and I'm combining them, I'm adding or subtracting, what do? Do I change the signs, keep the signs? What do? Keep the sign the same, and I add. So what's 35 and 27? 62. So minus 62y, and then I'm left with what? Plus 15. Perfect. What's my leading coefficient? 63. What's the degree? What's the constant? What's the name of this? Perfect. Good job, guys. Very good, very good. All we're doing is just distributing. We're going to take 3y squared and multiply it to everything in that second parenthesis. And then we're going to take 6 and multiply it to everything in that second parenthesis and then combine like terms. Notice there is not a sign in between these two parentheses. That means we're going to multiply. That's how we know. So I'm going to take 3y squared times 4y cubed. 3 times 4 is 12. And if I have y squared times y to the third, that gives me y to the fifth. Good. You're going to add the exponent. So now I have 3y squared times negative 5y squared. So 3 times negative 5, negative 15. Good. Okay, so we said 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, right? And then y squared times y squared is y to the perfect, y to the fourth. Now I have 3y squared times 9y. So 3 times 9 is 27, good. And then y squared times y is y to the third. Well, I have 2 in the first, and then so it's I'm going to add, so I get 3, right? Okay, good. Now we're going to take 6 and distribute to everything behind. Same exact thing. So 6 times 4y cubed. 6 times 4 is plus 24y cubed. 6 times negative 5y squared. Awesome. Negative 30y squared. And then 6 times 9y. 54y. Perfect. Now do we just leave it like that? No. Clean it up a little bit. Just combine like terms. What's the highest exponent you see? Okay. So I'm going to rewrite 12y to the fifth. Nothing else has y to the fifth, right? Then what exponent do I see? 4. So I'm going to write minus 15y to the fourth. Nothing else has a 4, right? All right. Now I have 27 and 24. Y to the third. Combine that. What does that give me? 51. Y to the third, right? Then what? Minus 30y squared plus 54y. Perfect. Now, guys, you'll have something like that on your quiz. Just take your time. Take your time. Make sure that you're multiplying your numbers correctly. Make sure that we're adding where we need to add, those sorts of things. Little things like that. Just make sure you're taking your time and paying attention. Sound good? All right, let me just show you something. You will probably have something on your quiz that looks like this. You don't have to write this down. It'll be in the video. So like, I don't know, 7x to the fourth minus 6y, no, not a y, x squared plus 7 plus negative x to the fourth minus 5x squared minus 3, okay?
So there's no...
All right, so say you have this problem. And there's going to be some of you that are like, oh, so easy, just combine like terms because there's a what in the middle? A plus sign. But there are some of you who aren't going to be paying attention and you're going to go like this. God bless you. You're going to say, well, multiply here, here, and here. And then I multiply here, here, here. And then I multiply here, here, here. And my answer is 27 terms long. And I'm going to mark it wrong. I'm going to circle this real big and just say all you had to do was add, okay? You're going to be adding, subtracting, and multiplying on this quiz. So make sure you take your time and pay attention. If there is a plus or minus sign in the middle, just distribute the negative sign if you need to, or just add and combine like terms. If the two parentheses are stuck together, that's when we multiply. All right, just make sure you're paying attention to that. Next couple things we're going to talk about are the sum and difference formulas. We have perfect square trinomials, those sorts of things. Again, a lot of you like shortcuts, which sometimes shortcuts are great because it really and truly makes time, it just makes time go quicker. You can understand and see patterns. Some of us won't see the patterns, and that's okay. But if you start to recognize patterns, it'll be very helpful, especially when you are factoring, which we're going to get to in a second. So these are just some pictures, some guidelines of what the special patterns look like. But when they ask you to actually find the product, what does the word product mean? Multiply. Okay, so they're saying find the product between 5x plus 9 and 5x minus 9. What do you guys notice about 5x plus 9 and 5x minus 9? It is the difference of perfect squares. Some of you may not notice that, may not have been able to articulate that and say it, but you notice, well, oh, geez, the 5x and the 9 are the same, but the signs are different. This is a special pattern. If you don't recognize it, it's okay. You can still FOIL it because 5x times 5x is 25x what? God bless you, yes. 5x times negative 9 is negative 45x. What's 9 times 5? X. Plus 45x. What's negative 9 and a positive 9? Minus 81. What happens, guys, when you have the difference of perfect squares? What happens to the middle terms? They cancel out. And you're left with 25x squared minus 81. Now, some of you saw 5x plus 9, 5x minus 9 and said, oh, it's going to be 25x squared minus 81. Some of you didn't. That's okay. If you recognize the pattern, fantastic. If you don't recognize the pattern, you can still FOIL it. Just when we recognize patterns, it makes things easier, God bless you, when we go to factor, which is what we're going to start doing after our quiz on Wednesday. Questions? No? Okay, let's pull up our homework.